The 2024 season is slowly but surely shaping up to be quite a competitive one, at least from what we've been able to see from the car reveals. And one thing is becoming certain: Red Bull won't have a walk in the park after seeing what Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren have developed for the upcoming campaign. Introducing brand new designs on their front wing and following a strong development direction from 2023 are just some of the things that Red Bull has to fight for, but what they've opted to do raised quite some eyebrows in the paddock, which additionally fuels the fire when it comes to Verstappen having to defend his championship a lot harder than in the past 2 seasons. But what team has the biggest potential to threaten Red Bull in 2024? And more importantly, what are the innovations that can dethrone the Austrian team from the top after they've opted for something bold? Red Bull has made an extremely brave move by choosing a brand new direction to go with their car. And although we should have expected this move from Newey's statements, it's safe to assume that nobody, not even the Red Bull drivers, had any idea of how much of a change the 2024 car would be compared to the previous seasons. But now that the side pods have been remodeled and are looking somewhat like the W14's design from the previous year, as well as the Mercedes-like engine cover of the RB20, it's safe to say that Red Bull assumed Mercedes had something in the pipeline in the past couple of years, but they had no idea how to optimize it properly. This could either mean good or bad news for the Austrian team, because while departing on this bold adventure, Red Bull is risking losing their dominance path that they've been so successfully working on in the past couple of years. But it was obvious that they were forced to do something new if they wanted to keep the momentum on their side, as Newey already expressed fears that a lot of cars in 2024 will look exactly like the RB19. Therefore, if Red Bull remained with the same philosophy or made 0 to no changes to the car, they would inevitably stand still in the same place they were in 2023, which, while it might seem like it's not a bad thing to do, it's worth mentioning that the rest of the teams had an entire winter break and a ton of data to use to be close to that version of the car. The fact that Mercedes introduced a brand new chassis and gearbox design, as well as a new front wing, which we'll talk about later in this video, has sparked some fear from the Red Bull side, as Helmut Marko went on to say that some of Red Bull's rivals, alluding to Mercedes, may have found a clever way of interpreting the rules in order to extract more competitiveness out of their cars. One of Mercedes' biggest weaknesses was the aerodynamics of the car, and although the zero-pod design was on paper the best solution they could have brought to this era, the uncontrolled amount of downforce was what brought it to its own grave. However, if you ask Newey, there is definitely something his team could do out of it, and that is why, from Japan onwards, Red Bull is moving more towards this zero-pod of a concept due to the lower temperatures of the track that should be present, unlike the first couple of races where the vertical inlets of the side pods will remain as they are. And this is something that Alonso said as well. Having the same regulations remain for 4 years without any particular changes to the aerodynamics of the car will inevitably bring a scenario in which all of the cars would look more or less the same. The difference would be in liveries only, assuming that the teams won't choose the radical carbon fiber black design. And if you think about it from a logical point of view, the pressure point is on Red Bull. They set the standard so high last year, winning 22 out of the 23 venues, and they have to change everything now in order to set a new precedent in the sport in the upcoming year. Another huge issue, or blessing depending on which side you're looking at, is the fact that the 2024 regulations will remain the same for the 2025 season as well. This will enable the teams that have built a great platform in 2024 to optimize the performance even further in 2025. And if Mercedes, McLaren and Ferrari found the holy grail with their new changes in the upcoming campaign, they would inevitably push it to the maximum in order to close the gap to Red Bull in the 2025 season to the fullest. On top of that, Mercedes has come up with some inventions for the 2024 season that will definitely be investigated by the FIA, but are very unlikely to be labelled as legal due to the fact that the fourth main plane is still attached to the nose. The rulebook does not specify the way it should be attached. It only narrates the car to have it strengthened to this part of the front wing. With this innovation, which has been executed by the old new technical director of Mercedes, James Allison, Mercedes are trying to find a cheeky way of exploring the creation of the Y250 vortex, something that was a primary goal to be banned from the 2022 regulations due to the return of the ground effect. But obviously, if a team finds a way to do so while staying in the regulations mark, it should be labelled as nothing less than an innovation. And right now, Mercedes have been dubbed to have made the biggest progress entering the 2024 season, something that pre-season testing will definitely show for certain. Elaborating on this matter even further, Wolff went on to emphasize the greatness of the changes that his team applied to the W15, adding, "This is a complete relaunch of a car. This is very different, not only on the aerodynamic surfaces, but mainly underneath. There are so many mechanical changes that we've made that we hope are going to translate into more performance, more predictability, and a car that the drivers can really push." On the other hand, we must not forget that McLaren has been following quite a steep development curve that started all the way with their first upgrades brought in Baku. And in the second half of the season, the team was more or less the fastest one not named Red Bull in consistency. Now, the MCL38 has a lot to give to the world in 2024, and this is one of the main reasons why we know so little about the car. The team didn't talk a lot about the upgrades and the modifications it made on both mechanical and aerodynamic levels. And when stuff like this happens, you're always relating to the fact that this team in particular has something to hide. Something that will be seen either on pre-season testing or the first race in Bahrain. Red Bull have also expressed their fears about the MCL38, saying that if they followed the development path that they have set on in the past couple of months, then their challenger will be the one that presents the biggest challenge to fend off. Of course, we have no idea what the new concept of Mercedes will bring and whether the front wing innovation as well as the new design will be enough to compete, because according to Allison, the fact that the team changed the chassis and the gearbox means that they had to give up on other areas of the car. But be that as it may, we have teams like Ferrari and Aston Martin who do not have that much to fix in order to be as competitive as Red Bull. The main problem is that everybody had a good luck at the RB19 due to its dominance, and there isn't that much that the team could change entering the new season. According to Newey himself, the Austrian team was very limited with resources both financially and technically. Now, the fact that Red Bull has opted out of a design that Mercedes chose in the past 2 years and has seemingly labelled it a failure goes to show that it's either Red Bull who is very confident that they can find a lot of performance with it, or they are desperate enough to escape what has been proven and not get caught up by their stalling of development. One way or another, the pressure will be massive on Red Bull, and the team will have to figure out how to keep the contenders behind, because from what we can hear from the rest of the grid, they are here to win races and not finish second. Zak Brown has been the first person to open the question of winning races, and after Stella said that the team has not met any diminishing results from the simulations, Brown continued, "I don't think Red Bull is far away. We've had another good off-season, but you never know what the other 9 teams have done. We certainly have drivers capable of winning races, and we certainly have a team capable of winning races, and the second half of last year, we had a race car that was pretty close to winning races. We've built a fast race car in the off-season, so we'll have to wait and see. We don't know what the other teams have done, but winning is certainly our ambition. Second places were great last year, but we've had enough of them to be ready for that top step." This was certainly not the narrative Brown or McLaren were preaching in the past season, when it was his driver Oscar Piastri who won a pole position for Qatar's sprint race and eventually went on to win the event as well. And quite frankly, with the budget cap posing a huge challenge, not only for the chasing but for the chased team as well, it's safe to assume that the competition will be brought much closer in 2024. And we might witness a couple more drivers involved in the highest step of the podium, ruining what could potentially be a perfect season for Red Bull. With this in mind, do you think that Red Bull could keep the dominance on their side in 2024 amid all the cars looking more or less exactly like the RB19? And more importantly, do you think that their side pod design will work wonders and will rub a bit of salt in Mercedes' wound, showing how things are done on the aerodynamic end of things? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.